A while ago, I made a video entitled "Where Are the Journalists?" and it was talking about the fact that you would think with the sheer scale of esports now, the amount of money in the scene, etc., that there would be masses of esports journalists, and there'd be tons of people, and there'd be so much content to be overflowing. And it has been an increase over the last couple of years, but that actually is not in line with like a line going upwards over time. There are actually, in some senses, less journalists than there used to be in the past. There used to be tons of journalists when I used to go to the esports events in like 2009 to 2011. You'd go into a press room and there would be like 50, 60 people there. Some from France, some from Germany, some from Russia, some from this website here, a bunch of Western websites, a bunch of big sites doing post-game interviews, all the rest of it. You go to press rooms now at huge esports events and regular leagues where someone who lived in that area could just cover it every single week. Sometimes you met with an empty press room. Sometimes you met with two sites of people. Sometimes you met with the same four people and the same two people do a couple of interviews each time. In CS 1.6, Warcraft 3, StarCraft 2, there were masses of journalists. So this second part of the video, and it's probably going to be a 3-part series, I think, because I've got some ideas for what the third one might be. I want to contrast the current day of the current environment for journalists and the current economy, even to some degree, with the old days to show you that it's quite ridiculous that there are less now and that it's a less vibrant scene when you consider almost every factor goes in favour of the modern journalist over the position that we were in even a few years back. So, first and foremost, to break into the scene, to become a journalist, to get recognition, to eventually begin a career, is significantly easier now than it used to be. For a start off, Reddit can bring you the majority of our traffic, and it can bring you much more traffic than anyone outside of a big website could ever have gotten on their own in the past, except for very rare exceptions of getting cross-posted across every other big website in esports. So Reddit alone means if you're actually good, or you do some good early work, or you just get the attention of some people and you hit the right current of thought or something that's interesting to people, you can instantly have as many views on one of your initial pieces as it would have taken someone like me 2 or 3 years to get to a huge website that could give you that kind of view. And also build your name instantly in a way where I'd be writing for that website. So a lot of people wouldn't even notice my name and they'd see it's just an article on that website. So beforehand, to get people to read your articles, unless somehow you locked into a job on a huge site, which isn't really going to happen unless you have experience, you needed to get people to go to your website, whatever small website or your own personal website you were writing for, via having a post linking to your work on other websites. Now, we don't even go to central esports websites anymore and then cross-post, etc. That's not even the way it's done anymore. But I assure you, it wasn't very easy. And essentially, it was like a miniature Reddit because you're trying to catch the attention of the people who work for those big sites. But there's an even smaller amount of people. They're only checking certain areas. It's a lot more difficult back then to get people's attention and get that into the industry. Right now, just the quality of your work alone can stand out immediately when no one knows who you are, and you can potentially get traffic thanks to Reddit. Most team sites nowadays use writers, and actually some of them have got to the point where some of them can even pay. Now, only big sites in the past had writers, so there would only be a handful of sites, especially depending on what language you want to write in, where you have the opportunity to even be a journalist and to work for them and to start out and to get your name associated with their brand and therefore elevate your brand and then eventually one day be known as a separate entity. There were only a few teams and a few sites and a few areas, a few spots that you could go to write back then. Now, every team has writers and advertises for writers and takes writers on and has an editor who could probably teach you some of the basics and give you some of the ropes and get you some contacts and get you interviews with some of the players for that teams. The opportunities are overflowing now. If you look and take the opportunities that are before you rather than demanding a certain opportunity exists which doesn't right now or you imagine you are entitled to or deserve in some way. People can now promote your work via retweeting, whether that be a pro player, a top organization who liked your article, other journalists, other figures, and get your name out there in a way it didn't exist before. There was no Twitter. I mean, for most games, people had no presence on Twitter and weren't using Twitter pre-2010. So all the years before that, even if some writer thinks I'm awesome, the best they can do is if they're a news writer and they somehow know about me, they could write a news post linking to one of my articles. That's it. There's no other way for them to help their fan base know that I exist. They don't even have a fan base, really, in terms of something tangible that they can contact and directly influence. And so, again, we're back to a very strict hierarchical system where there were very few entry points and you could easily be blocked or simply irrelevant and not known about, and you'd just be banging on a wall and no one would ever hear you. You can also publish via YouTube if you want to do video content. Now, remember, YouTube did not exist for like the first half of my career. It just was not a thing, and no one was publishing there. There was no centralized site where anyone could go, create an account, upload a video, and it potentially use an algorithm, be seen by other people, and then be put on Reddit and build its own following, and people subscribe and then know when the next video is coming out by their subscription box. None of these things existed. There was no way to do that. Funnily enough, when people would make an amazing frag movie, there was no central place. So they had to just release it on an FTP, and people download the movie literally to their PC. They couldn't even stream at that point in time. So there's another massive way you can get in front of people, and another tool to disperse and publish your work to potentially millions of people. It's also a lot easier, not only a lot more easier, but a lot more accessible to create and produce your own content. Webcams are incredibly cheap now. Software for webcams, OBS for example, is free. You can do everything you need to do with a webcam, which might even be built into your laptop if you have one, and OBS. You can get everything you need to, and their YouTube account, and there you go. You've got all the tools you need to publish if you're any good and start out and build your quality and eventually one day get better stuff. Internet is significantly better, so you can stream or you can upload videos. It won't take a whole day, etc. In the past, if you wanted to record something, you needed a camcorder. So you need something expensive, maybe $200, $300, could be more than that. Good software either didn't exist, or it was expensive, or you had to pirate it, or something along those lines. Good internet did not exist back then. In the days of modems, even if there had have been a YouTube, it would have taken me like 3 days to upload a video or something if it had existed back then. So it would not be viable. You couldn't stream, you couldn't be part of talk shows that are live, etc. All these factors are non-present. Skype did not exist at the time. Now, the good thing about Skype is, because it has video calls built within it, it means that you can quite easily do over the internet the kind of interview. I had to physically go to the event that the other player was at and meet him, get him agree to interview me, and carve out some of his time at a busy event to do that interview. You can do all of that if you can contact this player and get him to agree, just any time the two of you are free, over the internet using Skype, and then it's all free and you just upload it onto YouTube. That's an incredible advantage. If I'd had that in the early days, I could have built my name significantly quicker. It took me years and years of going to events, building up these relationships, learning how to approach players, how to talk to players, how to get other players on board who initially didn't want to do interviews, then harness my interview skills, because I'm not getting that many opportunities to actually do it in terms of on-camera video interviews, trying to get better in that sense, build out the publication, the distribution network, etc. Because again, we didn't have YouTube back then. All these issues that you have that now no longer exist. Even, and I went over this doing it in person, I actually started doing interviews this way. I don't go to events anymore because it's a massive hassle for me to get someone to pay for me to go to the event. And then when I'm at the event, to use up all my time doing this. And then to then have to go back and edit. So even I do interviews over Skype now. I use the most simple, free, basic method. Anyone can use that. It's very easy to do. There aren't the same downsides. Now, sure, it's not as great as when I was on Gamers and I had my own cameraman. He had an amazing camera and he could do 2 different shots and the quality was amazing. Sure, the aesthetic appeal is not as good, but the interview is equally as good. The interview has all the same qualities. It just costs next to nothing, and as a result is incredibly accessible for anyone, even someone with no career who's starting at square one. Likewise, you can make your own talk show. You can be part of talk shows. This was not possible for the majority of the early period of esports. Again, no YouTube, no streaming, no webcams. Well, people didn't have webcams back then. They didn't have good enough internet to stream to each other and do Skype calls. We couldn't do any of these things. You look now, think of the number of people on shows like China Talk who've built an esports career who, yeah, people didn't watch China Talk, but they knew it existed. And then some people maybe who were key in the industry did watch it and then found out these people had good minds. These entry points of access were not possible before. They did not exist. It's not that people didn't know about them. They just did not exist outright. You can make much more money and for much less work. And here's the kicker, for work you want to do now. Not doing some other person's work, some grunt work, and then maybe that'll give you a little bit of freedom and a platform to then publish something you want every now and then, like 1 out of 20 things or 1 out of 10 things that you do. No, you can do all of your own content that only interests you, like really refine that, and that could be your primary source of income. If you work for big websites like ESPN, The Score, and have a nice contract with them, There were no big websites back in the day, especially not on that scale. There was big websites relative to the scene, but a big website relative to the scene back then was nothing compared to what someone with a blog and Reddit can get in terms of hits per day. It was nothing compared to what ESPN, The Score, etc. can get with lots of writers, lots of funding, etc. Sometimes their own video players, etc. Freelance sites like Splice, Slingshot Esports, PvP Live, these did not exist back in the day. There was no one who was going to pay you to just be a freelance writer, pay you per article or for a series of articles, and pay you the kind of amount that you make now. You can make per article what people used to make for being loyal to one site, doing all of their work, including news posting and grunt work and updating scores. That would be their monthly salary. You can make that for one article now. That's how the level that we've gotten to at this point in time in terms of the economy in esports, the ecosystem. Starting out websites that exist that have the framework that look like a real article, and you can essentially start at nothing as a nobody, like Gamers, Medium, they did not exist. There was no free way to do that. Sure, you could make like a blog post or something, but since there was no Reddit, you could never get that out there. Also, if you do a blog post, there's no central place that people are going and checking out your blog from other ones. Oh, I like blogs and I like gaming, so I'll go here. That's not happening. Whereas the whole point of something like Gamers is you can click on Gamers and see all the different articles recently and see how they're doing, and then click on them and find other articles that are related that you like, etc. There are all these tools, even for the beginner, even for the person who effectively, in most cases, is going to be shit and not worth reading. Then you've got to add in, so back then, the main way, in fact, you used to do that, the equivalent, is just to be on forums and write a bad article on a forum and hope that people read the thread. That's maybe the in you could have like that. That's about it. YouTube channels not only exist, but have an income that isn't amazing, but it's a lot better than you used to be able to get in esports. If you have a YouTube channel and you put out decent content and you get a few videos pop off on Reddit, you can make in a month what we used to make for the 130 hours work in a month of grunt work that we used to make back in the day in esports. There's opportunities for income. There's opportunities for sponsorship. There's opportunities to join with other people and to cross-pollinate and to get people on your shows and then they go on their shows and you build your network up that way. These things did not exist. There was no YouTube, remember. With something like Patreon, if you just get a niche following, you can potentially make a living. You can make some good profit doing what you're doing. You can actually have money to then buy equipment, all the rest of it. There was nothing comparable to Patreon and crowdfunding back then in that sense. And as I mentioned, probably to me the most key aspect is you can make all this money, much more money, and have much easier access to fans and have a much better chance of succeeding if you're good and you improve yourself by doing what you want to do. You don't have to do, like even in 2009 to 2012, the majority of my week, probably an 80-hour week, was spent updating scores that a robot could have done if it had had access to server logs, writing basic news posts, rewriting other people's news posts, managing basic people and having to teach them how to write news posts because we didn't have much money, so people would join, get a very bad salary, then leave for a better salary elsewhere, so I have to train up new people. I had to do all that, and then for my own pleasure on the side, I could do the sort of content I do now. So as a result, I couldn't do as much, and I didn't do as much, and I didn't make my living from doing that. Now, I can make all of my living from the content that I enjoy. So can other people. Or they can trade it off for opportunities. Like they can join a team website, write some stuff about the team website, then have access to those teams' players where they wouldn't otherwise as a no-name. So there are a lot more options, and crucially, as I say, you can go the route of doing the content you want to do, and that's how you can make your money, and don't just feel like a workhorse who has years taken off his life just grinding away at the mill, So what I would say at the end of this video is make content, not excuses. There has never been a better time for esports journalism, for people to break in, for people to succeed, for people to make connections, for people to become known, and people to have flourishing careers than now in esports journalism.